Hello, it's nearly Chinese New Year, and so I thought I'd show you how to make a Chinese lantern garland to decorate your home and help celebrate the new year. So here's my example one. There we go. And as in many cultures, light and lanterns are really important at Chinese New Year. The lanterns symbolise hope for a brighter future, and they're often made in red. Now in China, red is a very auspicious, a very lucky colour, and it's believed to bring happiness. I've also in my lanterns included some gold, which hopefully you can see shining through there. And I've made some of my lanterns in yellow, and yellow and gold are also considered lucky colours, and they're believed to bring wealth. So hopefully, if you make this garland and hang it up, your home and your life will be filled with happiness, wealth and good luck. They're really nice and simple to make. They're made from card and paper, and then to add a bit more detail and embellishment, what I've done is I've put some trim around the lanterns. Now I've got two different size lanterns. I've got a big one and a small one, and two slightly different styles, a rounded style and one with a fold in the middle that's a bit more angular. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to make both and how to put them together to make your own garland. So let's get making, shall we? So here we've got the tools and materials that we're going to need to make our garland. So we're going to need some gold card or paper. I've got card here, but paper is absolutely fine. It's just that I happen to have some card lying around. Some red and yellow paper. Again, you don't have to use these colours, but they are traditional Chinese colours. The yellow symbolises gold, which symbolises wealth, and the red is considered a lucky colour in China, so that's why I've chosen the red. We're also going to need a glue stick or some double-sided tape. You can use either, it doesn't matter, whatever you've got. We'll need some scissors, a pencil and a ruler, and you might want to use a craft knife. Don't worry if you haven't got a craft knife or you're not confident using one, you can just use scissors. But for cutting the slits in the rounded lantern, it's a little bit easier with a craft knife. I've also got some different trims to go round the tops of the little lanterns. So I've got some nice gold braid and some gold ribbon. And I've also got a ribbon to hang the garland on. So you're going to need something to attach the lanterns to, so that's what the ribbon's for. So once you've gathered all your bits and pieces together, we're ready to start making. For each lantern, you're going to need to cut a piece of the gold card or paper and a piece of the coloured card. And what I've done, if I flip these over, is I've measured out the sizes that I need. So my garland has two different size lanterns, a large lantern and a smaller lantern. The large lantern from the gold card, I need to cut a rectangle that's 8 by 15 centimetres. For the smaller lantern, I need to cut a piece that's 5 by 10 centimetres. So each lantern has gold at the centre of it, and to make that you need to cut a rectangle to these sizes from the gold paper. From the coloured paper, you also need to cut a slightly bigger rectangle. Now if you look, you can see they're the same length, but they're slightly wider, and that's so that we get the nice lantern shape. So for the large lantern, you need a piece of coloured paper 9 by 15 centimetres, and for the smaller lantern, you need a piece of coloured paper 6 by 10 centimetres. So I'm going to quickly cut those out. And what you should also notice is that you can get several lanterns from each piece of card and paper. So you don't need to just have a sheet of paper for each lantern. You can get several from one sheet of paper and one sheet of card. And it is worth measuring these out first, because it means you'll get the sizes spot on. Okay, so I've got the bits for my small lanterns there and my large lanterns there. So now I'm going to cut out the gold card. And with the gold, it's much easier to do the measuring on the back, because generally with gold card, the back is plain white. So it's much easier to see what you're doing. So again, I'm just cutting out the shapes that I've drawn on. So those are the pieces for my large lantern. So I'll put those with my large lantern pieces. And these are the pieces for my smaller lanterns. There we go. So, start putting things together. So for each large lantern, you need a piece of gold card that's 8 by 15 centimetres and a piece of coloured paper that's 9 by 15 centimetres. If I just put one on top of the other, you can see that they're the same length, but the coloured paper is slightly wider. So large lantern, gold card 8 by 15 and the paper 9 by 15. For the small lantern, you need your gold card 5 by 10 centimetres and your coloured paper 6 by 10 centimetres. So again, we can see they're the same length, but the paper is slightly wider. So that's 5 by 10 from the card and 6 by 10 for the paper for each lantern. So you can cut as many pieces as you want lanterns, but each lantern needs a piece of card and a piece of paper. We're now ready to start putting our lanterns together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our gold card to make the little tube in the centre. And to do that, I'm going to use double-sided tape, just because it's a little bit easier. You can use glue for this. If you use glue, what you might need to do is paper clip the edges together once it's made up. So what I'm doing is I'm putting a piece of double-sided sticky tape along one of the shorter edges of the gold card. So that's double-sided sticky tape along the short edge of the gold card. Then I'm going to carefully peel off the paper bit, and you can just see where it's a different colour. That's where the sticky tape is. And I'm going to gently roll the card into a tube. Now if you're using paper, this will be a bit easier because it's not quite as stiff as the card. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just overlap the two narrow ends of the gold card to form a tube. There we go. So I'm going to just run my fingers along there just to smooth it out. And don't worry if you get a couple of creases, because remember the main part of the lantern is going to cover this over. So it doesn't matter too much, but you do want to try and get it sort of as round as possible. So that's the part for my large lantern made. So I'm going to just pop that to the side and we'll do the small one. One thing you can do just to help it roll a bit more easily is if you find something rounded, like a glue stick I'm using here, you can use that to kind of curl the card first. I'm going to do the same as I did before. I'm going to put a strip of double-sided sticky tape on one of the short ends of my gold rectangle. Smooth that down, and then I'm going to peel off the paper backing. This is a bit fiddly, this bit, so just take your time. And once again, I'm going to roll it into a tube and overlap the short ends. There we go, to make a cylinder. Like so. It wasn't terribly even, but it doesn't really matter because it's going to be hidden. And there we go. So I've got another little tube there, and that's going to be the inside of my smaller lantern. So we've made the insides of the lantern. Now we need to make the outsides of the lantern. Now, as well as having two different size lanterns on my garland, I've got two slightly different styles. So one of them is curved, it's got this rounded shape, and the other style has got a fold in the middle, so you get more of an angular style. And I like the combination of the two. So I'm going to show you how to make each one. First off, I'm going to show you how to make the rounded style. Now this is a little bit easier if you've got a craft knife, but you can still do it with scissors. It's just a bit easier with a craft knife, so I'm going to show you. Now what you can see is that on my paper, I've drawn out some lines. So I've done a line across here that's just over 1 centimetre, about 1.5 centimetres from the edge. And I've done that on each end. And in the gap in between, I've done lines going up and down, and those lines are 1 centimetre apart. And these lines tell me where I'm going to cut the slits. It's really important that we have this bit along the top and the bottom, and that we don't cut through this bit. Otherwise we'll just end up with a big pile of strips. So I've got a gap at the top, a gap at the bottom, and in between I've got lines 1 centimetre apart. And what I'm going to do is, using a ruler and my craft knife, I'm just going to go over the lines that I've drawn. And it's a good idea to always use a metal ruler if you're using a craft knife, because craft knives can quite easily cut through plastic rulers, whereas it's very difficult for them to go through metal rulers. It's also really important to make sure that your fingers are nice and away from the blade. There we go. So using the lines that I've drawn as a guide and my metal ruler, I'm using my craft knife to cut slits into my paper. Make sure that I put the lid on so it's not going to do any accidental damage. And then what you can hopefully see is I've got all those slits in the paper, and you can see how it's going to start forming a really nice lantern shape. So to make it into the lantern, I'm going to take the large tube, because this is the larger bit of paper, and I'm going to take my glue stick, and then, do you remember that gap that we left at the top and the bottom that we haven't cut through? Because remember, if we'd cut through, we'd just end up with lots of strips of paper. I'm going to put some glue all along that bit that we left free, like so. There we go. And now we're ready to start making our lanterns. So I'm going to find the join, the bit where I overlap the short edges of the gold card, and I'm going to glue one edge at the top and one edge at the bottom. And if you remember, our coloured paper is slightly wider than our card. So what we get is this really nice rounded shape, which will work for the lantern. So I've attached them at each edge, and what I'm going to do is just carefully line up the edges of the paper with the edges of the card. I'm going nice and slowly. I'm just pressing down as I go to make that glue secure, and hopefully you should have a little bit of an overlap. There we go. Give it a good squidge all the way around to make sure that it's stuck. And there you can see we've got our nice rounded lantern shape. And you can see the gold in the middle. It's reflecting the night light really nicely. And we've got our nice rounded shape from the paper. So we can pop that one to the side again and let it dry while we make our smaller lantern. So the same as before, I've got a gap at the bottom and a gap at the top that we're not going to cut through. But this time we're going to make the lantern with the fold in the middle. So what I'm going to do is fold my piece of paper in half lengthways. So I've got a long thin rectangle, but I can still see the lines that I've marked. And again, these are 1 centimetre apart. and using my scissors, I'm going to snip along those lines. And just like when I was cutting with the craft knife, I'm being really careful not to go right to the edge. I'm leaving this bit untouched. And because we fold it in half, it's the same on the other side. So I'm just going to carefully snip, snip, snip along these lines, making sure that I'm not going right to the edges. And then when I unfold it again, you can see that once again we've got a nice lantern shape, and this one is slightly different. Rather than having the curve, it's got this little fold in the middle. And you can do the folded one on the large lantern and the rounded one on the small lantern. You can do them both on each size, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to show you both techniques. So once again, we take our centre, our gold tube for the centre, and this is a little lantern, so I've got the little one. And we're going to pop, I'm going to just reverse my fold so that my pencil lines are on the inside. So I'm just folding it back on itself. And then where we left that top edge and that bottom edge uncut, I'm going to run some glue along there, like that. There we go. And the same as before, I'm going to find where I joined my short edges, and I'm going to line up my paper edge with my card edge at each end. And you can see, because we folded it, rather than the curve here, we've got a bit of a point. And same as before, I'm going to roll it round, matching up the edges of the card with the edges of the paper, going nice and slowly, squishing it down with my thumbs as I go so that glue sticks nicely. Little bit of an overlap, give it a good squidge down. And there's our second lantern, this time with the fold in it. So I'm going to pop those to the side now so that they can dry, and our next step will be to add a bit of decoration. To make my lanterns extra special, I'm going to add a bit of trim around the top and the bottom of each lantern. Now, I'm going to use double-sided tape for this, but if you haven't got double-sided tape, you can use glue. That's absolutely fine. And all I'm going to do is find out where the paper joins. It's a good place to start. And I'm going to put some tape around the top, lining up the edge of my tape with the edge of my lantern, like this, until it meets up there. And then I'll cut that off. And then, same as when we were making the centres, I'm going to peel off the paper. This is a very fiddly job. It's not easy to get the paper off. Just have to be patient. Keep at it. There we go. So peeling the paper backing off, and hopefully you can just about see where the tape is on there. And where the tape is obviously very nice and sticky. So I'm going to lay my trim around the edge, and it's going to stick nicely where that tape is. But say, don't worry if you haven't got tape, you can use glue for this. If you use glue, what you might need to do is put a couple of paper clips or bulldog clips to hold it in place while it dries. The advantage to using the tape is that obviously it's sticky straight away, and once it's on, there's no more sticks. So we'll do the same thing on the bottom half. We'll roll the tape around the edge of the cylinder, matching up the tape with the edge of the lantern. It is very sticky. You can probably hear my fingers sticking to it. There we go. Trim that off. There we are. And then peel the paper backing off. There we go. Find the end of my trim. I'm sticking to the lantern. and then stick the trim along the line of the tape. There we go. Cut that to size, like so. And that's our lantern decorated. So it just needs one more thing before it's ready to go on the garland, and that is a handle. So from the scrap paper, the bits left over from cutting the pieces for the lanterns, I'm going to cut another strip of paper, and this is about 1 centimetre wide and it's about 12 centimetres long. And I'm going to just glue the ends in to make a little handle for my lantern. So about 1 centimetre wide and about 12 centimetres long, there or thereabouts. A blob of glue on each end. There we are. And then on the inside, stick one of the ends in, press it down nice and firmly so that it holds, bend it back over itself and stick the other end inside, so you can see both handle ends are inside the lantern. Give it all a good squish to make sure it's held in place. And there we have a completed lantern ready for our garland. So carry on making lanterns, decorating them. I think I might put some gold ribbon round this one. Doing the same thing again, putting the tape down and then sticking the ribbon over the top. Make a little handle for it. And when you've got all your lanterns made, you're ready to construct your garland. Now, constructing the garland is really nice and easy. What you need to do is line up all your finished lanterns so you've got them in the order they want. And then basically what we're going to do is tie them onto the ribbon. So I've made a start on this one. You see there's quite a few attached already. And just in the order that you want them, thread them onto the ribbon. Make sure you've got the gap between each lantern as you want it. And then tie a knot. So all I'm doing is looping that over itself, like so. Tying in a loose knot to hold it in place, and that's another lantern attached. So we'll do the next one. Thread the ribbon under the handle. Make sure you've got the gap between the lantern as you want it, and then make a loop, tuck the end through the loop to tie it on. One more to finish off. Thread the ribbon through the handle of your little lantern. There we go. Moving my hand so you can see what I'm doing. Make a loop, tuck the end through, tie it on to make your garland. There we go. And you can make them as long or as short as you want, depending on how many lanterns you've made. And once you've got them all attached to your ribbon, you're ready to hang them up and enjoy them. So don't forget to show us how you've got on, and most importantly, have fun.